Welcome back to Bonkers For Boro, the podcast, and it is the international break. Thank the Lord. I never thought I would be saying that, but I am very, very relieved that we are now at the international break because the last few weeks being a Middlesbrough supporter has been pretty tricky, it's got to be said. Middlesbrough, of course, seeing their season falter a little bit over the last few weeks, particularly at home. But of course, the result on Saturday was not much better, with Middlesbrough grinding out a 0-0 draw against Blackburn Rovers at Ewood Park. Now, I think a lot of fans thought that Middlesbrough would go to Ewood Park and hopefully be able to get a victory to go into the international break with a bit of confidence behind us, maybe a couple of goals just to sort of end that sort of sorry patch in front of goal. But it just didn't happen. It was another game where it was a very familiar story. Middlesbrough creating lots of opportunities, having a lot of the ball, but just not really being able to do a huge amount with it. Now, we weren't at our fluent best by any means. We created a fair few chances in the first half. Second half was a bit of a damp squib, to be honest. We did have chances throughout the game with Aidan Morris and Alan Brown, but ultimately Middlesbrough came away with just a point against Blackburn, which was disappointing. Of course, it was over like 7,000 fans in attendance in Lancashire, which was an incredible turnout. I know that they would have been wanting to celebrate a win, as we all would have done, but it wasn't to be, with Middlesbrough earning just a point from that game. And I think what made that even more disappointing was the fact that at the same time, on Saturday lunchtime, Ipswich and Millwall were playing. Middlesbrough's two closest rivals in the Championship, third against fourth. Two sides who were sort of clipping at Middlesbrough's heels a little bit, and so obviously it meant that both of those teams, or at least one of those two teams, was going to drop points on Saturday. But it was both of them that dropped points. They played out a 1-1 draw, which was great news for Middlesbrough. It meant it was a big opportunity for us to pull away. Of course, if we'd got the win against Blackburn, we'd have been on 73 points. That would have put us 4 points ahead of both Ipswich and Millwall. Of course, Ipswich still have a game in hand, but it wasn't to be. Middlesbrough, 0-0 draw against Blackburn ended this little patch of fixtures, and I think it was probably the best thing for everyone, to be honest. It is now the international break. I mean, normally I'm cursing when it's time for the international break because I can't stand international football. It's all about club for me. It's all about supporting Middlesbrough, and so normally when there's a 2-week break, I find it really quite difficult from a footballing point of view, obviously relatively. But this time around, it feels like the right time to have a little bit of a break, just to kind of switch off from football, from my point of view, but also from the players' point of view, from Kim Hellberg's point of view. I think the fans need it as well, just to have that little bit of a break, because of course we've got 7 massive games coming up between now and the end of the season. Everyone is going to need to be on fine form, so potentially just having this little bit of a break for everyone to switch off, people to have a bit of a change of scene. Obviously, we've got players going out on international duty, so for them to sort of get away from Rockcliffe Park as well could be a good thing as well. It means that hopefully this time next week, or in 7, 8, 9 days, people will be coming back before that Millwall game, hopefully chomping at the bit and ready to hit the ground running for what's going to be a really, really important stretch for Middlesbrough in the Championship season. Of course, with 7 games left, it's all to play for. Middlesbrough still in second place in the table, which is a really good place to be, particularly given how badly we've done over the last few weeks. I mean, we've really slipped up, but we haven't been punished by Ipswich or Millwall, which is great. It means that we've sort of gotten away with it so far, but it does mean that we do need to pick things up over the next few weeks. I don't think that if we continue in this current vein of form, we'll be finishing the season in second place. I do think that Ipswich and Millwall would catch us if we were carrying on our current trajectory. So it's really, really important that we put things right after the international break, and maybe this little break could be the perfect time for Middlesbrough to regroup and go again, starting with that clash against Millwall on Good Friday. Now, of course, one of the main the main reasons why the international break is really, really important is the situation with Hayden Hackney. Now, he suffered an injury, a calf injury against Bristol City, and that 1-1 draw at the Riverside Stadium. It looked bad, to be honest, when he went off. He suffered it in the build up to Leo Castledine's goal. Went down, received treatment, came back on the pitch. Tried to carry on playing, but then ended up going down again. And yes, he was able to hobble off the pitch, which was an encouraging sort of sign. But Hayden Hackney doesn't just come off the pitch for any sort of mild strain. It didn't feel like the moment to bring him off as a precaution. It's not like we were 4-0 up and it was like, oh, let's get him off the pitch and give him a bit of a rest. We were still very much chasing the game. So I was a little bit concerned when he came off. Kim Hellberg since said that it could be that he's out for a number of weeks, could be 2-3 weeks potentially, that he's out for. Of course, he missed the match against Blackburn entirely, and he was a massive miss at Ewood Park. I'm not saying that he would have secured the win for us against them, but I think we would have had a much better chance. He is that one player who has that bit of stardust in his boots to be able to win these sorts of games. So I think he was a massive miss against Blackburn. So I think now the hope will be that we can get him back as soon as possible, and maybe even in time for that match against Millwall. So Kim Hellberg has said that he hopes that Hayden Hackney will be back and available in the second half of the international break. He hopes to have him back in training. It could mean that he'd be back in contention, hopefully, for that match against Millwall on Good Friday, which is an absolute must-win, an absolute proverbial 6-pointer at the top of the Championship. A really, really important game, and we need our best players playing in that one. I think if there's anything that we can do to get Hayden Hackney back fit, even if he's not fit enough to play the full 90 minutes, even if he only plays 45 minutes or 60 minutes or what, even if he's only fit enough for a place on the bench and he can only come on and play 30 minutes at the end, I think we need to have him involved, because this is such a massive game. I think we're now at the stage of the season where it really is roll the dice sort of time. I think we need to start doing things to make sure that we are getting the best out of every single one of these games. I think we are running out of games to get into the top two. Yes, we are currently there at the moment, but of course with Ipswich's game in hand, technically they hold the cards for the top two at the moment. But I think for Middlesbrough against Millwall, it's going to be really, really important to get a big result. And I think if we can get Hayden Hackney back fit, that'll be really, really important. I always think that the Easter fixtures are absolutely pivotal. Of course, you've got two games within just a few days of each other. Middlesbrough, we've got Millwall on Good Friday. We've got Swansea City away on Easter Monday as well. So I really hope that he's going to be fit to play a part in that Easter weekend, because if Middlesbrough are 2 games down without Hayden Hackney, I think we saw against Blackburn that it could be a bit of a struggle. I think we really struggled without Hayden Hackney. You don't really have anyone else in the team who can do what he does in the way that he carries the ball, the way that he moves forward, his passing, his vision, his ability to ping one in the top corner. I think ultimately that's a trait that we sort of need at the moment. I'm not saying he'll be able to do it in every game, but someone who's got that in his locker. We don't really have anyone else in midfield who can do that. Aidan Morris tried to get forward against Blackburn, but his shooting isn't good enough. It's not his natural game, to be fair to him. So I think asking him to fulfil that sort of role that Hayden Hackney plays is a bit of an ask anyway. I think it's just so important that we get him back. So if I was Kim Hellberg or the physio department, I'd be wrapping him up in cotton wool, just making sure that he gets as much rest as possible during this international break, because it'll be so important to get him back in the team, or at least back in the squad for that Easter weekend. I don't really want to get 2 games further down the line, still not have Hayden Hackney in, because by that point we'll be on 41 games played. We'll only have 5 games left. We don't know what the results will be over the Easter weekend with Ipswich and Millwall. So, of course, the picture could look very, very different then. So I think we really need to get him back as quickly as possible. I'd say that Hayden Hackney is absolutely essential for us getting into the top 2. If Hayden Hackney wasn't to play between now and the end of the season, I think our automatic promotion hopes would be over. I don't think we would have enough to get into the top 2 without him. I think that's why we need to get him back as quickly as possible, back in the team, because ultimately he is the player that, for me, is the difference between a top 2 and a playoff finish in this Middlesbrough team. He's the player who's head and shoulders above everyone else in the Middlesbrough squad. He is the player who is the star of the show. He is the player that we need to be able to get into the top 2. So fingers crossed we can get him back as soon as possible. Now, of course, everyone's been talking about the problems that Middlesbrough are facing at the moment, struggling to find the back of the net. There's been the conversations about, can Middlesbrough break down a low block? And I think we've discussed enough over the last couple of weeks about how it's not really that's the issue. It's not a case that Middlesbrough can't break down the low block, because ultimately we are creating an absolute shed load of chances, particularly in these home games when we're creating more than 30 opportunities. We're just struggling to find the back of the net. Now, of course, a lot of Middlesbrough's attacking players players coming under scrutiny, and quite rightly so, over the last couple of weeks. David Strelec, Morgan Whittaker's come in for criticism. You've even been looking at people like Leo Castledine, who missed a few opportunities against Charlton. Jeremy Sarmiento, we haven't really seen the best from him just yet. Riley McGree, he's been a little bit quieter in the last few games as well. Of course, he's having to play a lot of football, and maybe more than he's ready for, but he's been a little bit quiet. But Tommy Conway is always the person that sort of dominates the conversation when it comes to attacking play, because he's the player that many fans believe is Middlesbrough's number one striker. He's the man with the number 9 shirt. He's the one who Middlesbrough fans expect to be scoring goals and scoring the amount of goals that we need in order to get into the top 2, but that simply hasn't happened. It's been a real struggle for Tommy Conway in front of goal so far this season, and the frustration is that we know he's capable of it. We've seen in the last few seasons that he's been able to get into double digits in the Championship, both with Middlesbrough and with Bristol City. So we know that he's capable of finding the back of the net. It just hasn't really worked out for him this season. But what was really interesting was I was listening to the Boro Breakdown podcast at the weekend, and it was Dana Malt who was talking about Tommy Conway. She did a bit of a deep dive into the numbers behind his performances, and I'd really recommend listening to it if you haven't already. Talking about the numbers behind Tommy Conway's performances, and she put it in a far more articulate way than this, but she was basically saying that the stats behind Tommy Conway's performances suggest that he's not actually an out-and-out number 9. He's someone whose profile and his statistics and what he's expected to do in the game is much more of a player who plays off the left flank. Now, of course, we know that that's something that he has been doing under Kim Hellberg. Kim Hellberg does like him to drift out to that left-hand side. It gives him an opportunity to get on the ball and run at defenders. Kim Hellberg explained that when Middlesbrough are facing a low block, it's better for him to play on the left because he's got more room, as I said, to get on the ball and run at defenders and find space that way. When Middlesbrough are playing a side, as he mentioned, Preston at home, we played with a slightly higher line. That's when Tommy Conway can play as a centre forward and get a little bit more joy. But in terms of his chance creation, his passing ability, is all of these sorts of things in the final third, that's where he's done particularly well this season. So his stats are leaning more towards that of a creative, supporting attacking player in the final third, as opposed to an out-and-out ruthless goal scorer. So Dana was basically saying that she's going to start looking at him a little bit differently, not looking at him as Middlesbrough's number 9, the out-and-out goal scorer who's going to score these goals, but basically someone who is a supporting player almost in attack, someone who will drift wide and support the rest of the attack. And I think it was a really refreshing way to look at it, because I think that does make sense with the way that Tommy Conway lines up. I mean, the question, of course, is that's great with Tommy Conway, but we need someone who is going to put the ball in the back of the net. Now, I think when you look at Kim Hellberg's side, when you look at his Hammarby side before he came to Middlesbrough, he didn't actually play with a traditional number 9. When you looked at the other goal scoring spread of the team, it was spread around the team. He didn't really play with an out and out striker. He played with a much more fluid system. People like Tommy Conway would drift out wide. I guess people like David Strelec who would drop deep and sort of go into that sort of false 9 position. You've then got other players interlinking around that, and so it's clearly what Kim Hellberg is asking the team to do. But Middlesbrough do need to find a way to hit the back of the net, and of course the easiest solution to doing that is getting someone in the box, because often that has been the frustration for Middlesbrough, that we have created these chances but there's no one there to put it in the back of the net. Tommy Conway's drifted out wide, Strelec might have dropped a little bit deep, and you need someone in the penalty area. Now it's quite clear that Kaly Sene isn't the answer for Middlesbrough. Kim Hellberg clearly doesn't fancy him. He's someone who has barely featured in the last few weeks. If he has, he's been coming on for a couple of minutes at a time, really. He's clearly someone that Kim Hellberg doesn't see as a long-term fit for the system. But I think when you are in this position, when you've got 7 games left to go in the championship season, you need to throw the dice. You need to find a way to win games. It might not be perfect. It might not be exactly how Kim Hellberg wants his team to set up, but we need to find a way to utilise our attacking players to give ourselves the best chance of finding the back of the net. Now, for me, Kaly Sene isn't perfect by any means. When he has come on the pitch, he hasn't really done a huge amount, to be fair, so it's not not trying to rewrite things and say that Kaly Sene is the answer and he's the one that's going to get us promoted or anything like that. But I do think we need to find a way to compromise a little bit and just do what we need to do to get the win. If that's piling strikers into the box, if that's launching the ball in there and having Kaly Sene in there, or even Cruz eBay in the box, people who are in there, goal scoring threats, someone who might just get on the end of one and scramble it in from close range, I think that's exactly what we need to do. I do think there's maybe an element of maybe Kim Hellberg being almost a little bit too principled in the way that he sets things up. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not criticising, because the way that we're playing, the chances that we're creating, statistically, we've been absolutely incredible. He's pointed that out a few times in his press conference. So I don't think fundamentally anything needs to change, but I think it's just when you get to this stage in the season, you maybe just need to have a bit of more of that that kind of almost like streetwise nature about you, a bit of that nous, a bit of that experience, just to find a way to get a victory. It doesn't have to be pretty, it doesn't have to be glamorous, it doesn't have to be part of your wider game plan, but just finding a way to get the ball in the box, get it to one of the strikers and just scrambling in a goal, even if it's from a set play, whatever it sort of is, just finding a way to put the ball in the back of the net. So I'm not sure that Kaly Sene is the answer, but we do need to try something, because the fact that we've been struggling to score a goal in the last few games is quite concerning. I think it'll be a real shame if we get to the end of the season and we drop out of the top two, and it's because we haven't been able to win these games, because we've been drawing these matches when, quite frankly, we could have been home and dry really if we'd been able to see out these home fixtures against these quite winnable teams. So I think Kim Hellberg does have some decisions to make. He needs to find that formula to get us over the line, to put the ball in the back of the net. We've mentioned about Tommy Conway and the way that we're playing with him. Maybe it's on Darren Strelec to step up and become that more selfish, ruthless goal scorer. Maybe it's on some of the other players to step up. Maybe Morgan Whittaker needs to come back into the team and kind of show what he's about. His form dropped off massively in the last few weeks, so it wasn't really a surprise that he's dropped out of the team, but he is someone who he has shown this season that he can find the back of the net, so maybe he needs to be given another opportunity in the team to show what he's capable of. And these are some of the changes that Kim Hellberg will have to think about as we come back after the break. Of course, we're going to have a couple of players away during this international break. We've got Aidan Morris away with the United States, we've got Riley McGree away with Australia, we've got Alan Brown away with the Republic of Ireland, Conway's away with Scotland, Darren Strelec is away as well with Slovakia. So we are going to have a number of players away, and so maybe this might be the opportunity to just take a little look at some of those squad players and see whether there is a plan B or a plan C that you can come up with, just to kind of give us something else, something a little bit different, to catch players, catch opposition clubs, off guard in those final few minutes, just to kind of see if there is another 5-10% that we can get out of this team to give us a slightly better chance of winning these matches. Because as I said, the next 7 games are going to be absolutely crucial. We really do need the players doing everything that they possibly can. It just seems a little bit wasteful to me when we've got Kaly Sene and Cruz eBay and even Sanjay Hansen sitting on the bench, these attacking players who aren't getting onto the pitch when we are chasing a game. I think for me, you are at the stage of the season where you just need to throw them on now. You just need to see what you can do to get a win, because it would be an absolute crying shame if we ended up falling out of the top 2. Because quite frankly, if we were to go into the playoffs, I'm not sure how confident I would be that we'd be able to come out of it, because it looks really, really competitive. I mean, at the moment, you've got Ipswich, you've got Millwall, you've got Hull City, you've got Southampton, you've got Wrexham, who are right there, and even Derby as well. There's not many of those teams that I would fancy us against, particularly on current form. Maybe Hull would be the most appealing of all of those teams, maybe Derby. The rest of them, I wouldn't really back us against them. And so I think for Middlesbrough, it's just really important that we can avoid the playoffs and just do everything that we possibly can in order to finish in the top 2. And I think that's the conundrum that Kim Hellberg is going to have to solve. I think it's up to him ultimately to find a way to win these games. It's all well and good having your principles and playing good football and creating lots of chances, but if you're not winning games, ultimately that could be costly come the end of the season. So there's plenty of food for thought for Kim Hellberg. He'll, of course, be working very, very hard behind the scenes to try and find a way to get Middlesbrough back on track. But I think for supporters, it's now just about resting up, really, over this international break. I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I found the anxiety of the last few weeks pretty hard going, to be honest. I feel like I'm quite a level Middlesbrough supporter. I've seen good times, I've seen bad times. I kind of like roll with it quite easily. But the last few weeks I have been quite anxious going into these Middlesbrough games, and I think that's something which is replicated amongst a lot of supporters really. And so I think it's really quite important that we have this international break, maybe just for people to switch off a little bit, have a weekend off, because we're really going to be needed in these final 7 games. It's going to be so important, that particularly when we start off with that Millwall game on Good Friday, that the Riverside Stadium is absolutely bouncing. We need to make sure that there's no anxiety in the stands, that we're firmly behind the team, making sure that it's a real positive environment where the team can go out there and play their natural game, and they're not going to be inhibited by nerves or anxiety themselves, which comes from the stands. We need to make sure that if someone gives the ball away within a couple of minutes, there's not moans and groans, and if we put one over the bar, then there's not moans and groans as well, because I think ultimately, for the sake of 90 minutes, we need to try and put that aside and just remember how big an opportunity this is for Middlesbrough. The fact that we're even in the top 2 with 7 games to go is pretty incredible, considering where we were at the start of the season. The fact that no one really expected us to even get in the top 6, let alone the top 2, and particularly when our manager left us after just 3 months of the season as well. I think there's been a lot that's gone against us this season, but we have showed real fighting spirit to get to this point. The fact that we've been in the top 2 since November is a real testament to this Middlesbrough squad, to Kim Hellberg, to the fans as well, who've played their part as well in getting us this far. And so it's just really, really important that we try and get ourselves over the line. Just one final push, get behind the team, do what we can. And I think, as I said, I think the international breaks are just important to switch off a little bit, step away, spend some time with friends and family, try not to worry about Middlesbrough for one more weekend. Because ultimately, when we come back for the Easter weekend, it's going to be all hands on deck once again, with 2 massive games within just a few days of each other, with Millwall on Good Friday, Swansea City on Easter Monday, and then of course the matches are going to come thick and fast after that as well. There's going to be trials and tribulations, there's going to be twists and turns, and it's going to be really, really exciting, but incredibly anxiety inducing as well. So I think definitely try and have a little bit of a break from Middlesbrough over the next week or so. Come back refreshed, come back recharged. Hopefully that's what Kim Hellberg and what the players will be able to do as well. Even the players who've been away on international duty, maybe even a change of scene might just be good for them. It's sometimes good to just have a bit of a change of environment and then come back, and then hopefully people will be in a good place to really kick on against Millwall. So that's been this episode of Bonkers For Boro, the podcast. I really hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, hit subscribe if you're on YouTube, hit follow if you're on Spotify or Apple Music. We're on all of the main podcast platforms, and if you've enjoyed it as well, please do review as well. It does help us get found. Obviously, we're a new podcast on these platforms, so it's slow going to start off with, but fingers crossed we can build some momentum if people are enjoying these podcasts. So please do exactly that. We'll be back next week. We'll be talking about that match against Millwall, previewing that properly, and previewing the Easter weekend. Hopefully we'll get a special guest on as well, to really add to the excitement of those 2 matches. And I will catch up with you next time. Up the Borough.